Coming up on this episode, Draymond Green has built a legacy as one of the Golden State Warriors' greatest ever players over the past nearly 14 years. But are we in his final few days as a member of the franchise? Plus, what the Sacramento Kings move for Deandre Hunter on Saturday night means for Jonathan Kuminga's future before the deadline. Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates podcast. Hope you're all having a good weekend or had a good weekend depending on where you are. It's Monday morning here for me in Australia and I've woken up and still no real news on Giannis Antetokounmpo as we remain hopeful, semi-optimistic, I guess, on the Warriors potentially pulling off a trade for the Milwaukee Bucks superstar. Very interesting reports over the weekend that have continued with Nick Friedel of The Athletic in an article, again, I woke up to this morning in regard to Jimmy Butler and Golden State's eagerness to retain Jimmy, even if they are to pull off a Giannis trade. Now, I think once Jimmy, unfortunately, obviously got injured nearly 2 weeks ago, now we were pretty interested in looking at what the Warriors could do with his contract. And the Warriors quite clearly, I think, cited pretty quickly that, hey, we're not trading this guy, that we're willing to go through his rehabilitation process off the ACL. And then we kind of thought, well, yeah, cool, we believe you. But if Giannis becomes available, then that's a whole new kettle of fish. And voila, Giannis has actually become available, or at least has requested a trade. Milwaukee are listening to offers. So we thought, okay, this makes sense. For salary matching reasons, we expect Jimmy will probably go out if a Giannis trade was to take place. However, from what we've now read from multiple reports this weekend, including from Friedel, including from the Stein line, that the Warriors want to keep Jimmy Butler, which means it's going to be Draymond Green who is going to be the key guy going out in a Giannis trade. Now, he's not the value, of course, all the draft capital, all the future picks, that's the value, but it could be Draymond going out in a Giannis trade rather than Jimmy Butler, which would, of course, form an incredible trio, arguably the best trio in the NBA in Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jimmy Butler. Of course, we wouldn't see that until Jimmy returns, and how he returns, of course, is still a question mark. Probably around the start of the calendar year going into 2027. If you can return around the start of next year, that would obviously be ideal. Wow, getting goosebumps even thinking of a Steph, Giannis, Jimmy trio and how that would work. More on that in a second. But this whole Draymond aspect is really interesting because he's already spoken multiple times, both on his podcast and in media interviews after games, about the potential of being traded, I suppose, and what these next few days mean for players around the league. Now, do the Warriors want to move on from Draymond Green? Like, ideally not, but obviously one of Jimmy or Draymond have to go out in a trade. I keep thinking to myself, okay, why are they willing to move on from Draymond and not Jimmy? I can't help but feel that the Warriors have already got some indication from Milwaukee and or a potential third team that could be involved in a trade that they don't want a bar of Jimmy Butler's deal. Then they don't want to take on the $54.1 million he's on this season, and then I think it's $56.8 million next season. And of course, you're not going to get anything out of that until he returns again, maybe start of next year, next start of calendar year. I can't help but think the Warriors have got some indication on that, and that's why maybe they're getting out in front of it a little bit and leaking themselves that, hey, we're not going to trade Jimmy Butler. When in reality, maybe they would be willing, but obviously no one wants to take on the contract. If we take it on face value, though, and say, no, the Warriors would actually just prefer to trade Draymond Green rather than a guy that's going to be out for the next 12 months, well, why would that be the case? First of all, Jimmy is clearly just a far superior player to Draymond, right? And doing this kind of deal that keeps Jimmy Butler would be a signal that we are not necessarily vying for a championship this season, but we are loading up and making deals that give us the best possible opportunity for next season. And of course, having Steph, Giannis, and Jimmy by the time the 2027 playoffs roll around, and Jimmy's hopefully played for a few months and got back up to scratch and stuff like that, that obviously gives you a big opportunity. Okay, if those guys are healthy, like again, that trio would be extraordinary. I think the other aspect of this, which I've spoken about all along, is Draymond and Giannis as a pairing doesn't make a ton of sense in the front court necessarily. And I posted on Twitter and had a few different comments on either side of the argument about, well, if Giannis was actually to be traded to the Warriors, then Steve Kerr and Golden State would have to start having not even a conversation. I think it's like, I would just do it. I would bring Draymond off the bench. I just think a Giannis Horford combination is far better than a Giannis Draymond combination to start a game and trying to provide enough shooting around Giannis. Obviously, Draymond could then sub in for Giannis and, within 3-4 minutes, still play 20, 25 minutes a game. Obviously, Giannis would run the non-Steph minutes. So, Draymond playing as much with Steph is obviously going to be beneficial. But these are all hypotheticals if Giannis was to be traded to the Warriors and it was Jimmy going out instead of Draymond. Okay, which by the sounds of it, again, the Warriors might be interested in trading Draymond. The other part of this is, I wonder if, again, Milwaukee's saying we don't want interesting Jimmy and we want you to go and find a third team for Draymond if this is going to happen. Okay, where I don't know who it is. I don't think Draymond has a whole lot of value around the league. I think him on his money with a $27 million player option isn't a whole lot of value to begin with, let alone the fact I think a lot of teams and I think a lot of fans, analysts, have real question marks on, would this guy, it's been the case his whole career, would this guy still be as good on another team, or is he uplifted by the Warriors system, the fact that Steve Kerr, puts the ball in his hands and lets him be a point forward, and, of course, playing alongside Steph Curry and the chemistry those guys have built over the last nearly 14 years. So I think that's still a question mark for everyone. And therefore, is a team going to be willing to give up any kind of asset for Draymond Green, where the Warriors can say, all right, Milwaukee, we've got this third team that's willing to take on Draymond. They're willing to throw in another protected first-round pick, or maybe just another player that you like more than Draymond that you can take in, because obviously that'd have to be contract going into Milwaukee. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what the Warriors are exploring right now. I don't know what Milwaukee themselves would want with Draymond. Like, it's not as if he's a guy who, you can suddenly rehabilitate his value and then another team would come really calling for him. I don't think he's not a scorer where, okay, let's just put the ball in his hands and let him score 20 a night for the rest of the season. Then we'll reevaluate in the offseason. That ain't going to happen with Draymond Green. So I don't know what Milwaukee would want with him. I actually, if I was them, I'm not sure I see the issue necessarily with taking. I know a lot of people on social media are like, well, what do Milwaukee want with Jimmy Butler who's not going to play for 12 months? Well, they're looking to tank. So they don't want help to win, which I suppose Draymond, if he went there, could help them. Like, at least he'd be on the floor, so he'd help them to some degree, I guess. And I don't think they necessarily want that. And then also, I feel like Jimmy on an expiring next season, maybe if he comes back start of January, maybe if he looks good for a month, you could actually flip him for genuine assets as an expiring contract, this time next year. So the whole Draymond Jimmy dilemma to this is really, really fascinating. But from a Warrior perspective, I think if it does go down, then it's a case of, okay, right now we're 27 and 23. We're 8th in the Western Conference. We appear pretty stuck in the West. They've got a couple of game buffer on teams below them, and they're also a couple of games below the teams in front of them. So they appear pretty stuck in the 8th seed right now. Steph has this knee issue, which is probably going to be an ongoing thing by the look of it. It's not a major issue. It's just an overload, too much workload injury, essentially, where he needs rest, but they can't really afford him to rest. They're just going to have to manage it for the rest of the season. Giannis is obviously out for another month and at least past the All-Star break, obviously. So is this team capable of getting up into a top 6 seed, even if they did trade for Giannis, and obviously with Jimmy out for the rest of the season? I don't know, maybe even if they make through the play tournament, maybe there's some kind of puncher's chance. Like if you just put Steph and Giannis in a playoff setting, maybe there's some kind of hope there for you. But I think it would be more so about, you know what, this season is with Jimmy out is a little bit of a wash. But if we can get Giannis out of it, then it's a great set. Like that's the thing for Golden State. And I think as fans right now, it's like if the Warriors just go on and make the play-in tournament, maybe make the first round of the playoffs, like would that be disappointing? Yeah. But if suddenly you traded for Giannis Antetokounmpo the next week, then I actually don't really care what happens for the rest of the season. If he is on the team, is willing to sign the extension in the offseason, we've got Giannis Antetokounmpo for the next 5 years, then this is just a great season, regardless of like on-court results, because it gives you an opportunity moving forward to maximize the rest of Steph's prime. And if you can come back and you keep Jimmy Butler and you're coming back next season with Steph, Jimmy, and Giannis, man, that gives you something, right? That is something to talk about already. And then people will be like, well, you're going to have like $160 plus million in Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Giannis Antetokounmpo if that's the case. Like, how can you have three superstars? We saw what happened in Phoenix. That didn't work. This idea of like a super team with three max players, you know, recent history in the NBA would suggest that in this CBA it doesn't work. My argument would be, hang on, a trio of Steph, Giannis, and Jimmy is far superior to a trio of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. Like Bradley Beal was like a dude on a max who was nowhere near that caliber of player. Okay, so that's just like comparing those two things. I can't even believe I'm bringing it up. Like it's just pointless to even compare. Like these guys are legit. We can argue, right? We can argue, oh, should Jimmy Butler have got that max extension? Okay. We could argue about that. But is he worth like pretty close to what he's making? Yes. Like we saw his impact on the Warriors. They're a 700 win team, right? From the point that Jimmy Butler arrived to the point where he went down, okay, in the regular season. Like this dude is hugely impactful. So having that trio, yes, they would take up all of your salary cap essentially. But can you imagine going out in free agency and having the ability to pitch to particularly veterans who are looking to build a champion, looking to win a championship? Can you imagine going to them and saying, hey, come and play with us. We've only got a minimum to offer, but you've got the opportunity to play with Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jimmy Butler. Like that in itself is almost worth cap space. Legitimately, that in itself is almost worth cap space because you have such a strong pitch that you can provide to veteran minimum players that within itself is massive. Okay, so I don't even have an issue with. I don't think I'd have an issue with paying 3 max contracts in that scenario because the 3 guys are all unbelievable. Like you've got 2 top 10 players and then another guy who's 20 to 30, let's say, right, in Jimmy. Again, what he looks like coming off the ACL, we'll wait and see. But before his ACL, that's, you know, the caliber of player he was. And so it does make you excited about what the Warriors could be next season, not so much this season. Now, if they were to trade Jimmy and keep Draymond, then I think it elevates the pressure for the rest of this season. And maybe that's something the Warriors just don't want. Maybe they're like, we don't want this pressure that, oh, okay, suddenly we've traded for Giannis, that we're going to go straight into championship contention straight away by this year's playoffs. Okay, maybe we want to actually give ourselves some time. We think that Steph is still going to be great next season. And we're going to put huge pressure on ourselves for next season. But in the meantime, the Jimmy injury, and this is the whole point of the Jimmy injury, the Jimmy Butler injury gives Golden State an out. Okay, and unfortunately, like we can be frustrated as that by fans, but it's just like the case. It's just facts. Okay, the Jimmy Butler injury means that if he's still on the roster by the end of the season, past the deadline, then Golden State suddenly have a reason as to why they're not going to be a championship contender this season or a legitimate threat in the Western Conference this season. A reason that is much more significant and more valid, I guess, than, well, we tried to make a move, we tried to make an upgrade in the roster, it just didn't work out for us, so we're standing pat. Okay, and a lot of fans would be really, really frustrated by that. And I think if Jonathan Kuminga, which I'll get into in a second, if he's still on the team past the deadline, there's going to be fans that are frustrated with that. But it now gives them a doorway to doing that where they can then make the argument, right? They can say, we want to keep Jimmy. Okay, we think Jimmy can come back and be great next season. We think Steph can be great next season. And so we don't feel like we have this overwhelming pressure to be a contender this season, like there was before the Jimmy injury. Before the Jimmy injury, we're all here saying the Warriors are 12-4 in their last 16 games. This team can actually be really good. Okay, all you need to do is turn Kuminga and some picks or whatever into another meaningful rotation piece. Maybe it's Michael Porter, maybe it's Trey Murphy, like a real big name player like that. Maybe it's something a bit smaller. Whatever it is, this team needs to go out and make a deal. Otherwise, we're going to be really frustrated because you're not maximizing the rest of Steph's prime. Now it's like Jimmy's injured, so we're probably not going to have a hope in hell anyway. Okay? Now, if you get Giannis and you keep Jimmy, that is still kind of there, where it's like, well, you got a $50 million player on the sideline, so you're not expected to compete for a title. Now, again, if you got Steph and Giannis, maybe you're some kind of puncher's chance in the playoffs, but I think the Warriors would still be giving themselves an out there and saying, again, $50 million player on the sidelines, hard to win, hard to do anything meaningful there. Okay, as opposed to if you trade Jimmy, you keep Draymond. Now it's like, okay, we've got these three guys. Maybe you get, you're trading Butler and Kuminga. Maybe you get a piece back from Milwaukee there. Now it's like, okay, now we actually think we should have a legitimate shot this season straight away. Even though Steph's got a slight knee injury, Giannis has got an injury, and obviously you're 27-23 and only 8th in the Western Conference over halfway through the season. So this is, I think, the reason, like there's a whole lot of reasons here why it makes more sense to trade Draymond than it does Jimmy. Okay, despite the fact that you would look at it on the surface and say, why are you trading a legitimate franchise legend and preferring to keep a guy who's literally going to be out for 12 months and not playing, right? It does that. When you say it like that, it sounds weird. But again, for everything I just laid out, I think the reasoning, like there are valid reasons for this. In terms of what the deal would look like now with Draymond in it, it'd be Draymond, Kuminga, Pods, one of Hield or Moody. Obviously, if you're the Warriors, you're trying to keep Moody, but he might have to be in the deal. It'd be one of those guys. And obviously all the picks. And you get back Giannis, you get back his brother, and hopefully you might get a minimum contract. Maybe you get Gary Trent out of it or something, an actual useful rotation player, another cheap contract in there to about $60 million worth of exchange. Maybe there's a third team involved that Draymond goes to, and they give up, I don't know, protected first round pick. I'm not even sure Draymond's worth that, but who knows? Maybe the Warriors can explore that. The whole Draymond dynamic right now, because it seems fairly obvious, right? It's pretty obvious. No one is reporting like directly that the Warriors are trying to trade Draymond. But you just got to put two and two together. The Warriors absolutely want Giannis. That is facts. The Warriors reportedly want to keep Jimmy. Okay, that's been reported in multiple outlets. Therefore, they're looking to trade Draymond. Draymond has a $27 million player option for this offseason. If he's still on the team beyond the deadline, there's no Giannis trade, I'm going to be really, really interested to see what happens with Draymond Green in the offseason. Okay? How does he react? How does he feel about what's happening right in this second? And if he's still on the team, how could that impact his decision in the offseason? Whether to opt in, whether to opt out? Because I've said, could Draymond take one for the team and say, if he's still on the team, and say, all right, I'm going to opt out of my player option. Let me re-sign for 2 or 3 years at $15 million a year. Okay, and do the Warriors a big favor. Okay, because let's be honest, they've done right by him. There's been a lot of controversies with Draymond Green over the years. We know about that. And yet, he's still on the team. He's been here nearly 14 years. They've stood by him. So, could Draymond take a little bit less? Sacrifice a little bit in the offseason? Maybe he could. But he's not going to do that if he thinks and he knows that the Warriors are trying to trade him right now. So, it's really going to be a fascinating... What happens here is going to be a really interesting factor in what happens in the offseason with Draymond with Giannis, obviously, if he's not traded before the deadline. I think Golden State's chances of getting Giannis in the offseason are fairly remote. If you're the Warriors, you need to be trying to make a deal right now, right, in these next few days before the deadline. All right, Kuminga. So the trade deadlock across the league was broken yesterday. We've had a couple of deals now with Vic Krejci going to the Portland Trail Blazers. For my man, Duop Brief, Australian shout out, Duop. A couple of seconds in there as well. Pretty good deal, I think, for Portland. But obviously the first one, late yesterday, Saturday night, US time, Sunday Arvo for me here in Australia, with the Kings landing Deandre Hunter, Dennis Schroeder, former Warrior, and Keon Ellis heading to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And obviously another former Warrior, Dario Saric, in a couple of seconds heading to Chicago Bulls. Sad downfall of Dario Saric's career. Remember his first couple of months at the Warriors? It was like, man, this guy's actually really good. Great pickup on a minimum contract. And then ever since then, he's like out of the rotation for the Warriors. Played absolute sweep overall for Denver. They somehow flipped him for Valanciunas. He played 5 games for Sacramento. His NBA career is over, unfortunately, Dario Saric. He will not get another contract in the NBA. I'm surprised he got the contract he did with Denver, but it is what it is. So what does this mean for the Warriors? Because it's a pretty meh trade. It's involving two Eastern Conference teams. So who really cares with that? And then the Kings, who get DeAndre Hunter, and the Kings suck anyway, and Hunter's not going to be a needle mover for them too much. I don't hate him as a player. It's just is this really going to shake up the Western Conference? Absolutely not. But it does add some real intrigue into what the Kings' level of interest in Jonathan Kuminga now is before the deadline. Because they were in the market for Jonathan Kuminga. They've been the lead suitor, the strongest suitor for him since obviously his franchise stalemate in the offseason with the Warriors and trying to negotiate sign and trade opportunities, which Golden State had no interest in. And the Kings have remained, even as Kuminga has become trade eligible now, they've remained the lead suitor for him. And yet they go out now and trade for another 6'7" forward type in DeAndre Hunter. To me, pretty obvious that the Kings have either, there's two things here. The Kings have either got an indication that they just can't trade for Jonathan Kuminga, that the Warriors are showing no interest in what the Kings have to offer because they've taken the draft capital off the table. The Warriors flat out could have got this deal. The Warriors could have got Dennis Schroeder back and Keon Ellis, or some combination of Malik Monk and Keon Ellis, or DeMar DeRozan and Keon Ellis. Okay, because the Kings, Keon Ellis was a valuable player who I'm sure some team probably would have given up some kind of first round pick for, and instead they're like, no, we're going to use this asset to get off bad money in the form of Dennis Schroeder, who they only signed just in the Dennis Schroeder contract. I said it in the offseason. I was like, what the hell are they doing? 3 years, $45 million for Dennis? Come on, Sacramento. Just a joke of an organization. And now they've had to dump that contract. They also traded Valanciunas for Saric to make room to get Schroeder. And now they've had to give up second round picks to get off Saric, to then obviously trade Schroeder, and they've given up Keon Ellis, who was an asset. Just an absolute bizarre, Sacramento. Come on. This is why I was always in the offseason. I was like, can we get Keegan Murray, or can we get some ridiculous deal from them? Because who knows what they could do. Anyway, so they either just have this they have no indication from the Warriors that Kuminga is going to be available at a price that they're going to be willing to meet, because the Warriors seemingly have no interest in DeRozan, no interest in Malik Monk, especially. Obviously, no interest in this kind of deal that they've just done for Hunter. There's either that, or DeAndre Hunter becomes a Warrior by the deadline. And I think that's very unlikely, because apparently Sacramento actually like Hunter, right? And they want to bring him in, and they see him as a strong rotation piece for them. But it was interesting, the Steinline reported yesterday, only hours before this trade went down, that the Warriors had explored interest with Hunter in a potential swap, I suppose, between Kuminga and Hunter in a deal with the Cavs before the Giannis thing took over. And now everything, doesn't matter who you are, everything's been cast aside, thrown out the door. We're just focusing wholeheartedly on Giannis, and that's it, right? So but that's interesting. The Warriors explored interest in DeAndre Hunter. So let's say the Giannis thing goes away. Milwaukee are like, we're keeping him. We'll see what happens in the offseason, but we're keeping him. Or he gets traded to Miami or somewhere else, and it's not the Warriors. So the Warriors go back to the Kings at the last second and say, all right, well, here's Jonathan Kuminga and Trace Jackson Davis for DeAndre Hunter. Is that like, can that happen? Yes, that could happen. Do I expect it to happen? No, I don't think so. Not because apparently the Kings like Hunter, right? They actually want him part of their team. So I don't see them just flipping him again in the next few days. But that is possible. Okay. Just one thing to keep an eye on as in regard to that. However, I think the more important aspect is that Sacramento aren't the same level of suitor for Kuminga that they were 24 hours ago before they made this trade. I don't think they're going to have the same level of interest in Kuminga. And therefore, I think there is absolutely no doubt in what Golden State's trade plans are right now. I think it is, we are trading for Giannis and we're going all in. We're giving up all the picks. We're giving up Kuminga. We're trading a franchise legend in Draymond. We are making one of the most blockbuster deals this league and particularly this franchise has ever seen. We're doing that. Well, guess what? We're doing nothing at all. Not a thing, right? Maybe there's a real minor move where they open up a roster spot or something to sign Pat Spencer. But at this point, like, who cares about that? I think they are not going to make any kind of deal for the sake of making a deal, which now with Jimmy injured, most deals would be the sake of making a deal because you can't get, even if you got some kind of rotation upgrade, who cares? It's not doing anything for you for the rest of the season with Jimmy out. So to me, Kuminga either is a Milwaukee Buck because the Warriors get Giannis, or, and I'm sorry to say for those of you who simply just want Jonathan Kuminga off the team, or he's still a Golden State Warrior by the end of next week, by past the deadline. And the Warriors say, all right, here's 25, 30 minutes a night. Go out, do your thing, try and average 20 points for the rest of the season. Hopefully build some trade value, and we'll reassess in the offseason. We'll pick up your team option. We'll look at trades then. Maybe Giannis is still available. Maybe Milwaukee at that point are like, oh, look what Kuminga just did over the last few months. I don't know. Maybe another team looks at that. I don't know. At this point, I think everyone should understand the experience of, okay, if the Warriors do keep Kuminga, if they do give him 25, 30 minutes a night, he's going to put up, like, the dude puts up numbers, right? He puts up numbers. Is it going to contribute to winning? Probably not, but the Warriors don't care because Jimmy Butler's out injured, right? They're not really going to care too much. And therefore, I think we should all take what happens past the deadline if Kuminga's still on this team with a little bit of grain of salt, but that's probably not going to be the case. We're probably going to overreact to it. Anyway, it is what it is. Okay? But I'm here to tell you, if he's not a member of the Bucks, he's probably a member of the Warriors. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy to, see another shock deal come into place. Maybe the Warriors go back to the Kings and say, all right, we'll take DeAndre Hunter. Like, we've showed interest in him with the Cavs. Let's do it. Whatever. Hunter's got a deal again for next season, but they're making similar-ish money. Whatever. Okay. That would be such a meh trade, but I think a lot of Warrior fans would be like happy about it because it's just getting past the Kuminga experience. DeAndre Hunter hasn't been good this season with Cleveland. He's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. Like, you think he's going to be this long-rangey, athletic guy who can finish at the rim and can shoot and can defend a little bit, can handle the ball, but he just I don't think he does anything at elite level. His numbers this season, like 14 points, 4.2 rebounds per game. It's like, oh, that's okay. He's shooting like 42% from the floor and 30% from three. That's not good. So it'd be like, whatever. We're just getting past the Kuminga experience. But again, I'm fully expecting it's probably a stronger than 50% chance of Kuminga still on this team past the deadline, because I think that's less than a 50% chance that the Warriors get Giannis, and therefore that would suggest that Kuminga's still going to be on the team. But we'll wait and see. I'm hanging out. I'll tell you what, when I got the notification late yesterday of the Bulls, Cavs, Kings trade, my heart skipped a beat. I saw Shams, I saw break in. I was like, all right, here we go. And then it was just a pretty meh trade that doesn't really involve the Warriors aside from the whole Kuminga situation, which I suppose is fairly important. We're going to finish up there, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. It's POK252 on X/Twitter, Golden State with Mates. On the Patreon, on Instagram and TikTok as well. Going to have Stevie on in the next 36, 48 hours for an episode to get all his thoughts. Of course, anything and everything could happen before then. If you want up-to-date reaction on everything, you can check out my work over on bullymanhoop.com as well. And, of course, Twitter /X as well. Thanks very much, guys. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you're on YouTube. Are the Warriors going to get Giannis? Are they going to trade Draymond? What do you make of the Kuminga situation in the wake of the Kings trading for Deandre Hunter? Until next time, thanks again.